Wayne, let's start big picture. Wildlife, animals in Australia, been a bad year for them, right?
The fires that consumed so much of the Australian landscape killed, it's estimated, 3 billion animals. That's billion with a B. That includes kangaroos, koalas, dingoes, platypuses, the incredible array of distinctive wildlife in Australia. And it's a marker to me of climate change being a tremendous threat to animal welfare. It's no longer an abstraction. It's real when 3 billion animals on a continent die.
I mean, some of those populations may never recover, will they?
I mean, what it suggests is that the habitat is going to be permanently degraded. This is not going to be a one-time circumstance with the heat and the fires. It's going to recur. The threat is that it's going to be worse, and that these animals who are already kind of hanging on are going to be pushed over a cliff.
It's sort of a side story, but while we're on the subject of climate change and fires, California, what's happening there now? We hear these stories about X number, 10,000 square miles or acres were destroyed in this fire or that fire. We see trees burning. We don't think about animals, but animals are dying there as well.
Fire is a terrible threat to animals. Animals who are in the ground get scorched. Animals in trees get scorched, and in between. I mean, we really can never calculate the loss of life, but the California fires alone, it's in the millions and millions of animals, which means, again, that climate change is not some far-off thing. It's not an abstraction. Yes, we should be concerned about trophy hunting and the killing of animals for fur, but we should be really concerned about disturbing the environment so much that the habitat becomes unlivable for the animals, that they're literally burned alive.
Back to Australia, kangaroos. So you read different things online about kangaroos. I've seen articles where they are painted as sort of like a pest. Like there's so many of them. They're like wild hogs or wild horses that ranchers and other people want to get rid of them. Is that true?
You know, let's establish first that kangaroos and their many species are native species. They belong in Australia. They've been in Australia for thousands and thousands of years. They've evolved with the landscape. They do very little damage to the landscape. Some of this kind of smearing of the kangaroos, if you will, is an effort by ranchers and others to just have an open playing field and do whatever they want. Kangaroos, some are somewhat abundant, others are endangered. The reality is the fires killed millions of them, and now commercial hunters are slaughtering them in incredible numbers. And you know, it's hard to believe that an animal could sustain this kind of human onslaught.
How many are being killed, and how many are being killed specifically for shoes? Do you know?
There are probably 5 to 6 million killed by shooting and direct killing. That, you know, puts aside the fires and the other perturbations of the habitat that are human caused that result in millions more dying. 2 million are killed for the skin trade, mainly for athletic shoes, but for other products as well. But the skin trade for athletic shoes, specifically soccer cleats, probably accounts for 80% of the killing. And according to the kangaroo industry that does this killing, this is the linchpin of the commercial slaughter. If you take away the markets for Nike and Adidas and Puma, who are end users of these skins, the killing collapses in terms of the commercial killing that goes on. 2 million a year. And George, that is not just adults. That's perhaps 400,000 joeys who are found in the pouches of their slain mothers.
So, and what is the harvesting process? These guys just go out, they ride along the roads and see a kangaroo and shoot it?
A small number of people, it's in the hundreds, they go out at night and they jacklight the kangaroos. They throw a spotlight on them and the kangaroo freezes to some degree, and then they attempt to shoot them in the head. Their heads are not very large. These are long distance shots at night, so many times the animals get maimed. They go off into the darkness. They become very difficult to follow, even if they wished to follow. This is a kangaroo harvesting operation in their mind. They're out to get as many kangaroos in as few hours as possible. And if some are lost, wounded, and go off into the outback, so be it. And they might kill 40, 50, 100, 120 kangaroos a night. They go to the places where the mobs of kangaroos gather, and they kill them in extraordinary numbers. And when you add it up throughout the year, you're talking 2 million animals. It's the largest slaughter of terrestrial wildlife in the world. It's perhaps 10 times plus bigger than the infamous Canadian seal hunt, where hunters go with their clubs and rifles and shoot these baby seals on the ice floes that have been, very, horrifying images to us for 50 years. This is 10 times bigger, but the world doesn't know about it. And we are connected to it because we're buying Nike shoes and Adidas and Puma, other shoes that are not properly labeled. People have no idea that they're contributing to this mass slaughter of the iconic species of Australia.
So describe the shoe trade, how this works. Why kangaroo skin for soccer shoes?
We do a lot of perplexing things to animals, George, and this is one of them. I mean, we don't need kangaroo skins. All of the major shoe manufacturers, Adidas, Nike, Puma, Diadora, they have alternative fabrics that they use for their soccer cleats. And they've already cleaned out kangaroo for running shoes, football shoes, tennis shoes. Most of their shoes are now vegan. They have been incredible innovators in lightweight fabrics that are durable and look great, serving the needs of high-end athletes as well as just the average weekend warrior. But for some reason, there is a history of using kangaroo skins that started with Pele, the famed Brazilian soccer star around 1970. There became a market, and it was said that kangaroo skin is supple yet strong. And it became favored by some soccer players, and it became a thing. And now here we are 50 years later, and we're killing 2 million kangaroos in the wild, not farmed. People think of, well, I have alligator boots. Well, many of those alligators are farmed, which doesn't make it right. But these are animals killed in their native habitats with their family groups, after the incredible destruction that Australia saw with the fires.
So you and other animal welfare activists have made progress on this. You in California specifically, which could, I guess you probably hoped it would spread to the rest of the country and the world. What changes were made, and what's the status of its enforcement?
California is the only state that bans the trade in kangaroo parts, and it's been off again, on again for many years, but it took effect permanently, we hope, in 2016. But the Center for a Humane Economy did an extensive investigation, went to every shoe store in the state, and determined if kangaroo skin shoes are being sold or not sold. We basically determined that 2/3 of California sellers of shoes, both the brick and mortar as well as the online sellers, were illegally selling kangaroo skin shoes. We have now publicized that. Dozens of these companies have written to us, said they're going to stop. We now have attention from the California Department of Fish and Game, which has been completely lax in enforcing the state law. Now they say they're going to write to all of these shoe sellers and stop this. So we've made some progress, and our theory of change here is that California, with 40 million consumers, can really change the equation for these shoe sellers. They don't want to produce shoes just for California and then shoes for the rest of the nation. So the reform starts with California, but we want this to go to Nevada, and we want this to go to every state in the country. There's no reason in the 21st century to have mass slaughter of native wild animals in their habitats for shoes when we have viable, acceptable, and in many ways superior alternatives.
Can the consumers tell a difference? Is there some kind of a status thing about kangaroo leather, K-leather, whatever you call it, as opposed to the vegan alternatives?
Well, I think, for the most part, these shoe sellers are enormous. They have incredible global footprints. This is a small percentage of their shoes. So most consumers are opting for vegan shoes or at least non-kangaroo based shoes. But even a small percentage of purchasers in a global world where soccer is so popular can result in demand for 2 million carcasses and skins of kangaroos. And that's exactly what's happened. So I don't think this is enormously popular. I don't think that anyone is saying, oh my God, this is essential. I'm not going to be able to play soccer. I'm not going to be able to score as many goals. I'm not going to be a great defender if we can't use kangaroo shoes. It's just a habit. And with a lot of animal abuse, it's just habit. It's been going on for a long time. This is why the companies, which pledge to be sustainable, socially conscious, need to stop sourcing wild animal parts from Australia after these cataclysmic fires and contributing to the killing of 2 million animals a year.
So you've called them out on it. They're aware that this is going on. They've said that they'll change. You have evidence that they have not changed. And Las Vegas plays a part in some of these stores being able to continue this. Explain that.
Well, Zappos, obviously, which is an iconic brand in Las Vegas and in Nevada and now all across the United States, on its website, if you go to buy Adidas Kangaroo-based shoes, they say, we can't ship to California. Well, we had folks who were testing the system. They bought the shoes from Zappos and they were shipped to California in violation of the law. They admirably do say, we don't ship to California, but then they go ahead and do it, which undercuts their credibility. But I think more broadly, Zappos should not be selling models of shoes that come from kangaroos. They got plenty of other options and models. No reason for them to be involved in this barbaric trade of kangaroo killing.
So my understanding is your organization has done some research that indicates that shoe sellers can come to Las Vegas and pick this stuff up themselves, that there are warehouses there that clearly are skirting the law.
You know, we've been trying to figure out how all of these shoes are getting into California despite a criminal penalty for bringing them into the state. And we have a number of undercover sources that told us that Adidas in particular is moving shoes to Las Vegas. And then some of the stores are going and driving to Las Vegas and then bringing them into California from there. So they're trying to be clever, saying, oh, we're not directly shipping there into California, but they're using Las Vegas as a port, if you will, and then they're going to pick up the shoes, or they have a few distributors who then do it. It's on the down low. They know it's illegal, and we are really trying to pin this down. But we are putting them on notice that this is not legal. You cannot filter your illegal kangaroo shoes through Las Vegas and ship them into California.
You need the public to get involved in this. You need the public to be angry. I mean, there's so much going on in the world. Everything's on fire. The election and COVID and economic collapse. The difficulty, I would think, for you is getting people to focus on this.
As with any animal issue in our world where the news cycle is so fast, but the reality is so many people care about animals. So many people are fascinated by kangaroos. They are one of the most distinctive species in the world. They're known to kids and adults throughout the world. They're the symbol of Qantas Airlines. They're the symbol of Australia. For Australia to enable this mass commercial slaughter of the most popular of species in its habitat, in its continent, in its country, for shoes for which we have alternatives is no longer acceptable. You know, this is something that we did in the 19th century. We slaughtered the buffalo or the bison in the United States for skins for the emerging demand in American cities that were robustly growing at the time. This is the same thing. We are slaughtering kangaroos in their native habitats by the hundreds of thousands, by the millions for skins, for a non-essential product for which we have alternatives. This doesn't pass the smell test ethically in the 21st century.
So, you know, people vote with their dollars. If they are informed, your hope is people will stop buying this, that California will enforce its laws, and that law will spread throughout the United States, right?
I'm alarmed that Nike and Adidas would risk this brand management problem by being associated with the slaughter of wild animals in their native habitats. These are big companies that talk about their commitment to recycling, sustainability, social consciousness, yet they're involved as an end user, the critical end user for kangaroo skins at a time when Australia has gone up in flames I don't see how this benefits the companies. And the only thing that will correct it is if consumers vote with their feet and their dollars. They will run away from kangaroo skin-based shoes, choose other shoes, and tell the companies, hey, I'm not trusting you any longer. Once your brand is damaged, it takes a long time to repair it. And I think Nike and Adidas really need to hear that message.
You spent a lot of time lobbying on Capitol Hill, talking to lawmakers, getting them to see the animal welfare point of view. What is your sense of the appetite for change on this? Is there any appetite for a national legislation? And the same question for Australia. What's the political scene there? Are you on their radar screen on this issue?
We are going to see very soon legislation introduced in Congress called the Kangaroo Protection Act in both the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate to forbid the import and interstate trade in any kangaroo parts into this country. So there's going to be a big movement. It will include congressional action. Australians are mixed about kangaroos, but we have found many, many leaders throughout the country who are joining with us and saying this slaughter is unbecoming of Australia. They are very alert to the problems with habitat protection because of climate change and the heating up of that continent. And I think there's a newfound awareness. But these traditions die hard. And when people are making millions and millions of dollars, they will fight fiercely to hold on to these profits. That's what this is about. They are killing animals by the millions for hundreds of millions of dollars. They're trying to protect that. And the reality is hundreds of millions of dollars will be gained by Nike and Adidas by just selling alternative fabrics. Those other fabrics come from somewhere. They're manufactured. People have jobs associated with them. This is an easy issue for the big athletic shoe companies. It's harder for the people who are killing kangaroos. They need to stop doing it. But that's the way the world changes. We stopped killing the buffalo in the US. We stopped killing endangered species here. We have other animal protection standards that we honor. They reflect our values. Those decisions and those rules and those laws and those corporate policies reflect who we are. And Nike and Adidas need to get with the program.
Final question. The last time we talked a couple of months ago, we looked at big picture animal welfare issues, endangered species. Give me your assessment now. I keep reading almost daily rollbacks of protections for endangered species, wolves, things of that sort, and rollbacks for protection of public lands. It seems like we're going in the opposite direction. And, with people locked down, they're concerned about COVID, they're concerned about whether they're going to be evicted from their homes. What has happened to animal welfare and animal welfare issues during this tumultuous time?
Well, it's been a mixed circumstance for animals. COVID has reduced threats to some animals, like bullfighting in Spain. People can't mass in crowds, and other spectator sports involving animal exploitation have declined. The mink industry has had outbreaks of COVID at the mink farms, and we've seen a reduction in the number of mink farms. Yet you see factory farming continue despite the immense threats that it poses in terms of zoonotic disease threats passed on to human beings. So it's very uneven, but I'll say that American politicians are doing some things that are beneficial for animals and some things that are very adverse. And the attempt to remove federal protections for wolves and grizzly bears and other threatened and endangered species in the United States is very real. We are really making major blocking maneuvers to try to stop that. But the onslaught from certain industries that want to exploit animals, mainly ranching interests in the West, when it comes to wolves, grizzly bears, wild horses, and burros, that's very serious. It's an ongoing issue. And Nevada is a flashpoint for that.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. So this is solvable. This is a fixable problem on the kangaroos.
This is an easy one. All these companies need to do is say, we're not going to source kangaroo parts from Australia. We're going to use our innovation and other fabrics to have great shoes that work for everybody.